Hi campers, good morning. It is I, Ladaz, again. Well, I took down my 2 AM video for two reasons. One, it became a bit of a rant, which is not what it was intended to be. And two, I'd made a couple of errors myself. So, true to my own word, I don't want a video out there where I've got something wrong because I'm waffling at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I've taken it down. So we'll try again now that I'm awake and rested and I'm not sat there shaking my head. As you can see, we've got a lovely day down here in Skeg. It's the sun's out, the birds are singing, all is good with the world. But I wanted to talk about some of these things that are going around at the minute. And I think I'm going to do a series of videos, as I said in the last one. The bullshit Skeggies heard this week. Because as we know, GKP have their bullshit statement of the week, and there are a lot of them floating around at the minute. Not even so much bullshit, just half truths, half information. It's the same old thing. When people go, stick to the instructions on the packet, but I'm going to do it this way, don't do as I do, and then don't give all the information of what they're doing. And my favourite one is PP, because as you all know, I'm a lover of PP. I think it's a wonderful stuff. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't. And PP has this mystique about it, about being incredibly dangerous stuff, which it is. It is. If it's done wrong, it can be catastrophic. And look what happened to Koi Fish Johnny last year. Absolutely horrific. But if it's done wrong, it can go wrong in a very big way. But if it's done right, it's a very, very effective treatment. Now, let's talk about it. The instructions on the back of the packet are put together by basically a team of lawyers who are protecting the company from being sued. And for somebody killing their 10 grand's worth of fish and then going back to the company and saying, your advice was wrong, you've killed my fish, yada yada yada. So most medications out there, when you look at the instructions, are erring on the side of caution. The instructions are for people who don't want to do any research, don't want to dig in a little deeper, and are, what I would say, not enthusiasts. They're the average pond keeper who really hasn't got that much interest in it but want to do right by their fish. And a lot of the medications and treatments, you find people are piling it in time after time after time because it's just not working. And I'm really not surprised. Things like a lot of the fluke treatments, people say, oh, they're not working, we've got super strains of fluke. No, we haven't. No, we haven't. They've just changed fluke treatments over the years. Fluke treatments are about half the strength they were a decade or so ago. And hence why we've got this new dosing regime on fluke treatments where you do a full dose on day 1, half a dose on day 2, half a dose on day 3. You're basically doubling the dose. You're basically doing what we used to do years ago when we were trusted as competent, before the sue you culture, as I put it. And you know, Prazi, you look at Prazi in most fluke treatments now, it used to be 2% and now it's 1%. So we've got this new dosing regime that everyone's going on about, but it's really the old dosing regime just split up over 3 doses, very close together. And I think it was DEFRA that got involved and said that fluke treatments had to be weakened because too many people were wiping out their ponds. And yeah, it's just mad. So everyone's raving about this new thing, which is really going back 30 years. But let's talk specifically about PP, because when I first started using PP several decades ago, people like NT Labs and Kasuri weren't even companies. They didn't exist. You bought your PP from a chemical company. If you were lucky, you spoke to people like Pete Waddington and Sid Mankey-Sankey, and you saw them at a koi club or a koi show, and they would impart information, and it was passed down the old way, father to son sort of thing. There was none of this online, go and look it up. You literally you had to talk to people and get the information. And a lot of that information came from people like Pete Waddington, who had spent time out in Japan and brought the information back. So that's where this all stems from, is people like that. Very, very well respected people who will probably have forgotten more than most of us will ever know about koi keeping and medications and doses and all sorts of stuff. But there's this whole, let's talk about Kasuri in particular, the Kasuri packet, because that's the one most people know. And this nice shiny gold packet with the purple crystals in it. And last night I had it in my hand, but I haven't got it in my hand. I'm out in the garden and it's in the house. But I think the Kasuri packet says to dose 6.8 grams per 4,500 litres. I think it is from memory, which works out to a dosing rate of about 1.5, 1.7 parts per million, something in that sort of region without a calculator in my hand. And then to leave that purple for 12 to 15 hours. So it starts going brown after 2.5 hours, which a lot of PP doses will. You've then got to top it up with another dose and another dose and another dose, and you've got to try and keep it purple for half a day. Now, firstly, I don't know many people that have got 12 to 15 hours to sit by their pond keeping an eye on their fish, which is what you should do when you're PPing. Secondly, by the time you've mixed up all those loads of PP and put them in the pond, you're going to dose it at probably a higher rate than I'm about to tell you. But you're doing it over a longer period of time. Because what PP basically does is it oxidises organics. So when it goes that brown colour, it's akin to the oxidisation of iron, which is rust. So it's that brown oxidised colour like rust. And what you try to do is you try to burn off all the organics in the pond. And by doing so, you'll also burn off the parasites by using oxidisation. So you got all these people giving half a story. Well, I'm not going to tell you what I've dosed at, but I've dosed it for 4 hours, and but always use the instructions on the packet, which isn't the instructions on the packet. But I'm going to give it you straight as I do. This is how I dose my pond with PP. I dose my pond at 3 parts per million, which is nearly double the dose on the Kasuri packet. So my pond is approximately 20,000 litres now that I've made it a bit smaller to try and get rid of some of the rat holes. And no, I haven't calculated it down to the litre, but you should know your pond volume down to the litre. That includes your pipes and your filters and everything else. And it's actually very, very simple to do. If you have a salt meter, which you should have, and you have a bag of salt. And what you'll do is you'll take a salt meter reading, and that will probably give you a base level of 0.02, which seems to be about the average percentage salt in tap water. But always check your own. So check what your salt level is in your pond. And let's say you think your pond is 10,000 litres. Add 9 kilos of salt. See where your salinity is. Now it should have risen by 0.9%, so you should now be reading 0.11 if you've got 10,000 litres. If you haven't got 10,000 litres, it will either read higher, which means you've got less than 10,000 litres, or it will read lower, which means you've got more than 10,000 litres. Then for every 100 grams of salt you add, that will equate to 100 litres of water. So as you get closer and closer and closer to this 0.1 change, you reduce the amount of salt you're adding down. So you'll add 100 grams and 100 grams, then you might go to 50 grams. Then you might go to a gram at a time, and if you add a gram of salt, it will indicate a litre of water. So if you add 955 kilo, 9 kilos, 550 grams of salt, and your salinity changes by 0.1%, that means your pond and your filters and your pipe work is 9,550 litres. It's as simple as that. And that way you can accurately work out your pond. No guesswork involved. Do it once, accurately work it out, write it down, job done. Your pond volume isn't going to change unless you've got a leak. But then you know, and you can dose things accurately and correctly. So on my pond, I haven't calculated it properly, but I know roughly the cubic meterage that I've taken off the pond, looking at the bits that are not full of water now. So I've calculated mine at about 20,000 litres. So my dosing regime is 3 parts per million. So that is 60 grams of potassium permanganate. I put it into a bucket, put an air stone in it, leave it for 20 minutes, and then I dump it. I don't do this, trickle it in over and out. I dump it into the pond by the returns and let the returns mix it up into the water. And that will just disperse it around the pond. Job done. I then sit and watch the pond. And what I'm looking for is colour differences. And I'm looking for the purple to drop off and start to go a brownish colour. And when I see that starting to happen, I'll go and mix up another batch of PP. And on Saturday, it was 2.5 hours. So I mixed up another batch at 50% strength. So I mixed up another batch, which was 30 grams. And I put that into the pond. That then kept it purple for the required 4 hours. And at 4 hours, or thereabouts, give or take 10 minutes, I neutralised out the PP using hydrogen peroxide at 12%. In fact, and I keep a 5 litre can of this by the pond when I'm PPing, because if anything does go wrong, you need to get that in your pond fairly quickly. And you see people sat there with a jug with the required amount of PP in it, of hydrogen peroxide in it. If something's gone wrong, it's gone wrong because you've overdosed. And that's why PP goes wrong. There's a human error element in it, and you've overdosed. And when you overdose, if you put in the required amount of hydrogen peroxide, that isn't going to neutralise it, because it's going to burn up before it's neutralised all the PP. You need to put in more than the required amount. So whenever I do PP, I always make sure I've got far more hydrogen peroxide than I need. Because if I slip and I pour half a packet of PP in the pond, I need to have enough hydrogen peroxide to get rid of that PP. And on my ponds, 750 milligrams, 750 millilitres will neutralise a normal dose of PP. But if I've messed up, I'm going to need a lot more than that. A lot more. So always have far more hydrogen peroxide than you think you're going to need. It's called being prepared. As the old man used to say, to fail to prepare is to prepare to fail. So if your pond requires 500 mils of PP to neutralise it, I would have at least a litre. At least a litre. Available to use there and then should you need it. Because hydrogen peroxide, yes, you can overdose on it, but you can't really. It would take a heck of a lot. Oh, and that's another thing I've seen. Hydrogen peroxide to get rid of blanket weed. It does not get rid of blanket weed. It will, however, get rid of green water, because what it does is it bleaches the chlorophyll out of the algae, so the algae becomes transparent and it dies because it's got no chlorophyll to photosynthesize. There's another top tip for you. So it's acting as a bleaching agent, basically. Right, so 4 hours hydrogen peroxide. I use 750 mils at 12%, and then the water goes that lovely crystal clear with that lovely sparkle on it. And then an hour later I'm putting in Fluke Solve Plus. While the mucus layer on the fish is not back, I'm putting in Fluke Solve Plus. And I'm doing that at the new dosing regime of a full dose day 1, half a dose day 2, half a dose day 3. Won't be any parasites in my pond. Can almost guarantee it. Well, until the ducks fly back and land in the pond and drop a load of fluke in there again. But yeah, almost guarantee with that dosing rate, there's going to be no parasites in mine. But you see people saying, oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because a lot of the dosings on packets are the bare minimum. You know, it's like salt. People going, oh, salt doesn't work. Salt is a very, very, very effective parasite killer. But again, you've got to dose it right. You know, someone sticking a couple of tablespoons of salt in a 1,000 litre quarantine isn't going to work. No, it's not going to work. A couple of tablespoons of salt in a quarantine of 1,000 litres. I'd put this in perspective, yeah. You need 1 kilo of salt per 1,000 litres of water to raise the salinity by 0.1%. So on 1,000 litre IBC, let's say, to get that salt up to an effective dosing rate to deal with 9 out of 10 parasites, you need to add 6 kilos of salt per cubic metre of water, or 1,000 litres. It's a lot of salt. If I salt my pond, I'm dumping 100 kilos of salt into it. Or I was before the change of size. That was when it was 25,000 litres. I was putting 100 kilos of salt in my pond in a go. It's a lot of salt. But salt is very, very effective. So, you know, I think we're at a stage where there's so many different opinions, as there always will be on things. But there's a lot of very bad information coming out, and I don't think people do it maliciously. They're trying to do their best, but they're putting out such bad information and hearsay and and things that they've been told by some bloke down the pub on a Saturday night who'd had a few too many beers. That, you know, I don't know, vinegar will treat ulcers or something. Sort of old wives' tales. I think it's time that people started actually putting out the proper information, not half the information. If you're not going to put the full information out, just say dose what's on the packet. But if you're going to put out the information of what you dose and why, then fair play to you. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually go, right, this is how I do it. This is what I'm doing. This is why I do it. You know, the information has got to get out there to actually deal with these things effectively. And it's starting to. There are some big names in koi that have got YouTube channels that, and I'm not just talking about big channels, I'm talking about people who really know their stuff with koi, starting to go, right guys, this is silly, you know, this isn't working. So let's see what happens, but I think Skiggy's bullshit he's heard this week is probably going to be a thing, because it's just, for me, it's just getting ludicrous, and I can't just sit here and watch it and watch people giving out information that is potentially dangerous to other people's ponds. So the birds are singing, the sun is shining, I've got coffee and I'm sat by the pond. So I'm going to go and get on and maybe clean some filters and do some more fettling on the new grow on ponds. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with some lovely footage of my pond all purple and a little bit of footage of my Yamatanishki growing show from Vince Twisted Koi and New Forest Koi. And we'll see what this week brings with the rattles, but hopefully this one's a little bit less ranty than the other one. Catch you later, guys. Welcome to spring, motherfuckers.